So, I just watched all 13 episodes of Jessica Jones, and here's my review and my general thoughts. Overall, I really liked the show, but I didn't love it. I wanted to love it, but as a fan of the story and the comics, I wanted it to tie in just a little bit closer to that story and include a little bit more from the Marvel Universe, rather than just minor references, but I'll get into that a bit later. The show feels like it's a film noir detective flick. You can tell it's borrowed elements from 1940s detective films all the way up until the 1990s detective thrillers, right down to the music in certain scenes, to having that classic noir piano theme that plays in the opening credits a little bit. When you compare this to Daredevil, it's not as violent or as gory as most people probably expected. Jessica lays the bloody smackdown on some guys, but nothing escalated more than a few hard punches, frozen kicks. Most of the hardcore violence came from the main villain, Killgrave himself. Speaking of Killgrave, I felt it was excellently portrayed by David Tennant and is arguably the entire MCU's greatest villain so far. You know you've got a brilliantly written villain in your hands when you can like an egomaniacal, narcissistic, psychotic, murdering abuser rapist. Killgrave was creepy and the mysterious boogeyman at the start of the show till about episodes 4 or 5, where you started seeing more of him and learning more about him. And then he started to become quite charismatic, charming, and somewhat sympathetic, all the while doing despicable, terrible things. All this, along with his sharp-looking purple suits and eccentric tastes, elevate him to the MCU's most engaging villains thus far. Every time Kilgrave was on the screen, you were never bored or wanting to check your Facebook to tide you over till the next interesting scene came on. Characters that did make you want to check your Facebook when they came on screen, however, were Ruben and his weird-ass sister, and post-drugs Malcolm. I found these side characters to be very boring, and it really slowed down the pacing of the show in a bad way. But I understood why they needed to be there, as Kilgrave's emotional kills to affect Jessica. But after Ruben's sister found out about her brother's death, they just became pure annoyances. The other supporting cast were more exciting to watch. Luke Cage, Trinity, Hellcat and Nuke were quite interesting characters, and I didn't feel like I was going to fall asleep when they were on screen. Mike Coulter, who played Luke Cage, was brilliant, and your attention was focused when he was on screen, just like Killgrave. In fact, if Luke or Killgrave weren't there, you felt a little bit more tempted to check your Facebook. Nuke, or Simpson, his name's Nuke in the comics, seemed like he came out of nowhere and became a main character. I'm sure everyone thought it would be a side character after seeing him being controlled by Killgrave, and we wouldn't see him again, but I like how he was integrated into the show as a main player. It felt realistic and something that could happen in real life. Not all the main characters need some epic introduction. I'm intrigued to see where Season 2 of Jessica Jones takes the Nuke storyline and the super soldier pills. Will he get an American flag tattoo on his face? That'll be pretty crazy, but in this world, Jessica Jones just seems a bit too unrealistic. But then again, we've seen people with crazy ass tattoos in real life, so how unrealistic is that anyway? Hellcat, Patsy, Trish Stratus, whatever you want to call her, was a good supporting character for Jessica. She took the role of Captain Marvel in the comics as Jessica's best friend, because Captain Marvel is busy right now trying to get all the big boys in the big screen in this universe at the moment. So the next best thing is for the Aussie Transformers chick to take over and be Jessica's new best buddy. I thought her character was cool and served their purpose. Jessica and her friendship or sisterhood was an interesting dynamic, since they changed Jessica's origin from moving into a foster family to moving into her future best buddy's house. Jerry Hogarth has been gender swapped from a fat old man to Trinity from The Matrix, not literally. Carrie-Anne Moss does great portraying the morally ambiguous Jerry Hogarth, who seems to be mostly out for her own skin, which is kind of questionable since her comic counterpart quite literally runs the Defenders, which these Netflix shows are leading up to. So, do you want someone that's dodgy, selfish to run your street level Avengers? Or maybe Marvel will change that aspect like everything else about this character, who knows. I enjoyed her divorce storyline with her broken-hearted wife. As pointless as it was to the main plot, it still created some interesting drama and helped us better understand what kind of person Jerry Hogarth is. And Jessica Jones herself was badass, funny, sarcastically charming. She was dark and a tragic character at the same time. She was portrayed very similarly to her comic book counterpart, with her drinking, her crude behaviour and her sexual gratification with Luke Cage that blossoms into a strange romance only they understand. though she didn't smoke like she does in the comic. The only problem I have is that in the show, she seems to be this badass tough chick from her youth and is the same kind of character right till the very end of her journey this season. She has growth, but in my opinion it's minor. She learns how to be a hero and be a bit less selfish. That's about it. But in the comics, she's kind of miserable, but then becomes this happy-go-lucky, optimistic and idealistic superhero that would fit right in with the Avengers. But after her 8-month stint with Killgrave, she quickly becomes the Jessica Jones we see in the series. I'm more than a little disappointed we didn't get to see this character arc played out on screen, even in flashbacks. This brings me to some of the things that disappointed me or just outright hated about this series. I was disappointed when the Jewel part of Jessica's life was treated as a joke, and how she called the reference to her superhero persona, Jewel, in the comics slutty. Will the Jessica in the comics think Jewel and that costume was a joke? Most probably, but not at that stage of her life, where she saw most things in a similar way to how her best buddy Trish, aka Patsy, saw things. I would have absolutely loved it if Jessica was maybe a more grounded version of Jewel with better gear and a not so cheesy costume, and we got that famous scene where Jessica and Kilgrave meet in the restaurant, played out in a similar way. The equivalent of her saving Malcolm in her black jacket in some random street was nowhere near as interesting or cool. Too long didn't listen to that? Well, basically, in simple terms, I hated how Jessica was badass since birth. I wish she grew into a badass and circumstances around her made her into a badass. I didn't mind that Kilgrave's skin wasn't purple like in the comics, especially since he kept rocking those slick purple suits, but it would have been sweet if he was referred to as the Purple Man because of those suits, like he is in the comics. Not as a villain name, but just as a scary boogeyman name like the character is. Almost like a ghost name. I think characters and victims of Kilgrave going around calling him the Purple Man, the Purple Man, oh my god, the Purple Man's coming, would have added to his mythos a bit more, while staying more faithful to the comics at the same time. I also wish at the end, when he was getting the upgrade of his powers, his skin actually turned into some kind of freakish, blotchy purple, with dark purple veins, or something that would have made the finale a little more special. Though the part where he yells "Stop!" and his purple veins come bulging out was pretty damn awesome. Another thing that bothered me was Jessica and Luke Cage's powers inconsistencies. I'm sure there are reasons for them, but some were just too damn glaring to brush off, like Trish knocking down Jessica and her noticeably feeling pain from it, and yet getting punched and thrown by Luke Cage and getting up like nothing happened, and then getting knocked out by a nerdy chick with a 2x4 for a whole night, while taking some serious bumps and hits elsewhere. Luke getting blown up in his bar and coming out walking like nothing happened, but a shotgun blast managed to knock him out cold. I guess Luke wasn't right next to the blast in the bar, but who knows, doesn't matter, whatever. I'm disappointed that Matt Murdock, or at least Foggy Nelson, didn't make some kind of appearance in this, since Jessica and Daredevil are literally in the same city, let alone the same universe, and the need for lawyers was rampant in this series. It seemed silly that they weren't even an option for any of the characters that needed lawyers, though we had a cool cameo from Claire Temple, the night nurse, played by Rosario Dawson, who debuted in Daredevil, but that just wasn't enough in my opinion. Matt Murdock coming in at the end of Jessica Jones as her new lawyer or asking for a job would have been epic. The worst crime committed by the writers of the show was the death of Killgrave. Arguably Marvel's best villain has been made hero fodder already. It's bittersweet because we were presented in a situation where he kinda had to die, and only made sense that he did die. But we lost a great villain who could have been utilised further in the MCU with his unique powers and personality. In the comics, the Purple Man is also a Daredevil villain. In fact, he started off as one, so it's a shame we won't ever get to see the Man Without Fear going up against David Tennant's Purple Man. In the Jessica Jones comics, after she escaped from Kilgrave's grasp, she meets Luke Cage, goes on many assignments with people, nearly joins the Avengers, and so much stuff happens before Killgrave returns, and we get what is essentially the Netflix plot. Killgrave is pretty much Jessica Jones' Joker. He's her Lex Luthor, and I personally wish they took more time with their battle. It's already reached the climax of the comics by the time the season gets to episode 13. In the comics, X-Men's Jean Grey is the one who gives Jessica her mental blocks in order for her not to be controlled and to defeat Killgrave. In the show, it's not even explained why she has the mental block after killing Cage's wife, which really bugged me. I felt maybe they should have casted Elizabeth Olsen's Scarlet Witch in a couple of episodes of this, if it really does take place after Age of Ultron. as she has similar powers to Jean Grey, and it would have been a cool way of integrating the MCU into the Netflix shows a bit more, and to give this impression of a powerful outside force influencing Jessica, just like in the comic. But yes, there are so many reasons I'm sure why they didn't go for that, which is fair enough, but at least give a decent explanation for her mental blocks against Killgrave. Though people hate the MCU's need to resurrect popular characters, I think this may not have been the last we've heard of Tennant's Killgrave. I think the ending of Jessica Jones is not what it seems, but that's just my speculation. Despite my disappointments and the missed opportunities, the series was very good. The villain was creepy, sadistic, charming, sympathetic and engaging. Luke and Jessica's chemistry was through the roof. The story was gripping for the most part, with some cool, clever, shocking twists, and is more than a welcome addition to the MCU into the Netflix Marvel world, and I can't wait for season 2. Still not better than Daredevil though. But I give Netflix Jessica Jones a 4 out of 5 stars. Thanks so much you guys for watching, I hope you enjoyed it, and if you will, please check out some of my other reviews. They're just as good, if not better than this one. Don't forget to subscribe. Peace.
Sweet Christmas.